guys, here come the dollies. They got fresh sinkers, hot coffee, and the sweetest smile.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Clubmobile is open for business.
Yeah, for you, I've been here manning it the whole entire time.
For me, we're back. Winnie's been holding down the fort. Winnie's been holding down the fort while I was gone.
We've I thought, what I feel like we should, talk about it. It's going to be like a bit of a different episode this time around.
Am I the guest on my own podcast?
Yeah, essentially. But the de facto
Am I the de facto guest? We couldn't get anybody interesting for you guys this week, so I'm the de facto guest.
Look, listen, all the boys that were there on this tour, busy. So,
Busy.
it's Gabby. It's Gabby
me.
this time.
Hi.
I thought it'd be really nice to discuss it, talk about it, and
Yeah.
I feel like it would attract our viewers to even seek out doing a tour like this themselves. Because
Absolutely.
I know that you feel really I think you feel really good that you went. It's
Fulfilled.
been kind of fulfilled, kind of a gift, and it's been such a gift to watch you get to do it. So where would you want to start? You want to go like day by day, or
so for anybody who doesn't know about these tours, we'll start there. The We Happy Few 506 team is a group of individuals. I don't want to say led by, because that might just inflate his ego a little bit, but the group was created by Matthew Leach from Band of Brothers, who played Floyd Talbot in Band of Brothers, portrayed Floyd Talbot in Band of Brothers. I hate to use the phrase played them because they were real men.
It kind of like
takes away from the importance of it. He portrayed Floyd Talbot in Band of Brothers. Matthew started this group during COVID. And what it essentially was that it was a way for fans of the show and history nuts and buffs to kind of get together. And he organized these incredible Zoom events during COVID where he would bring together little like de facto bits of the cast. So you'd get like little, not going to call them cliques of people, but you'd get certain members of the cast and would talk about certain episodes. So you'd get like your Rick Gomez, Jimmy Matteo, Ross McCall on one episode. You had Donnie Wahlberg and Kirk Acevedo and Neil McDonough on another, Richard Speight. And he would host these Zoom events with the help of Leighton, who I would class Leighton as Matt's right-hand man. The two of them, I think, are just
dream team.
They're running the show seamlessly over there. And there are plenty of people. There are plenty more people behind the scenes. I could really name them all. And I will just say that the We Happy Few team is a well-oiled machine.
Oh, for sure.
We'll just leave it there. They are a well-oiled machine. Everybody that works for them and with them is just awesome. So they would host these Zoom events, and you'd pay X amount to jump on Zoom with them. And the guys would talk about the episode, they would talk about boot camp, they'd talk about training. And you would kind of get to see how their friendship has withstood the test of time. And I mean, Band of Brothers is coming up on 25 years. It
is.
Which is a milestone. So Band of Brothers is coming up on this incredible milestone, but now we're going back 5 years to when Matt started this group.
Yeah.
We would just sit there and enjoy it. I mean, could sit there and listen to them talk. It'd be an hour and 15 minutes, and you just sit there on a Saturday afternoon. The world around you at that point, who cared, right?
Yeah.
We were still in like lockdown mode. We were still pretty limited to what we could do, and we were given this gift.
Yeah.
And that's what I call it. We were given this gift.
I attended a couple. The thing is, at that point, I had only just watched Band of Brothers, and I think around COVID time, it was my 5th or 6th rewatch.
Okay.
Because I just had it on a loop. I don't remember who was the guest on the one that I was in for, but I always find it so funny that you and I always feel like we're supposed to be friends, and we always met in these tiny spaces without knowing.
We were there and didn't know each other,
Yeah, me,
which is
you,
so crazy
yeah,
to
me,
me.
you, and Claire, who we mention quite a bit.
Yes, Claire, who made our
Yeah.
awesome theme song, who does a lot of our behind the scenes production, was also Claire was the victim of Matt throwing
Yeah,
her
I
into the
remember that
live.
was the one I was
She was in the
in.
dark. That was the
She
one.
was.
I remember that. And I remember when we met Claire years later now, she's like, "Oh yeah,
Mm,
Matt added me to the live and I was putting the baby to sleep and the lights were off." And he said to me, "Why are you in the dark?"
because
And
my
I remember
baby's
saying
going
to
to
Claire, "Oh
sleep.
my God, that was
It was
you."
you.
I remember that was you.
We did, I think, what was it, about a month ago? We all of us just kind of clocked that it was each other,
Yeah. Yeah, that we were
which
all
I
there at the
loved.
same time. And
Yeah.
5 years ago, nobody knew.
No.
And fast forward now, right? So Zoom parties, let's call them Zoom parties because that's kind of what they were.
They
They were these
were.
awesome
Yeah.
parties. We Happy Few has really just taken off, and now they organize and plan these brilliant battlefield tours. And this was their 10th tour. So this one that I was on was
Already.
their 10th tour, my
Wow.
first.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the timing never lined up, or I couldn't make it.
Mm.
And then finally it was like the stars aligned and I said, you know what? I'm going.
I'm
I'll
gonna do
make
it.
it. I'm gonna make it work. I'm gonna go.
Exactly.
And there were a whole host of people there that you and I know
Hmm.
that are our friends in a smaller group of
Yes.
more war nuts, we'll say.
Yeah.
Um, and this particular tour was the second of the Mighty Eighth on film. So this was the second
Yes.
Masters of the Air tour that they did. They did one in September of 2024 with the Rosie's Riveters crew
Mm.
from the show. And then this one was focused on the Stalag Luft 3
Yeah.
boys. So we were very lucky to have Adam Long, Jonas Moore, and Jordan Colson with us.
Mm.
So Benny DeMarco, Frank Murphy, and Hambone from Masters of the
Yeah.
Air.
I love how we give everyone their full names, and yet Hambone
Hambone,
stays as Hambone.
Howard Hamilton, Hambone. But yeah,
Even though I could not be there and I could not go, it brought me so much joy to see all of my friends in places that I grew up in or near. Because Thorpe Abbotts is only like 30-40 minutes from where I grew up. And then the first day when you told me you were going to Rougham, I'm like, that is my hometown. You're in my hometown. It brought me so much happiness knowing that you were somewhere I grew up. It was so nice. I loved it, which is why I was never upset or sad that like
it
you
was
were
a
there.
very strange feeling to be. First of all, it was very almost a strange kind of surreal feeling to be somewhere where at one point was this busy airfield.
Yeah,
This
they
was a
closed
this was
it.
a base. So if you Google Rougham,
That's
now
it.
it's RAF Rougham,
Yes.
but it's the old RAF Bury St. Edmunds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the town you grew up in, Bury St. Edmunds.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And it also was this surreal feeling to be like, I'm standing in a place where my friend grew up, this person who, when I was a kid and she was a kid, we had no idea we existed.
Mm.
And now all of a sudden I'm standing in the place where my one of my dearest friends grew up, and it almost makes you feel closer
Yeah.
in a way. But then there's this surreal, this was a busy place 80 years
Yeah.
ago,
Mm.
80, 82, 83 years ago. If you go back before, obviously, VE
Yeah.
Day, this was a busy place. And it's so well maintained
Oh,
at
yeah.
Rougham.
They
The crew and the volunteers that work at the museum,
hmm
you can absolutely tell how much care they have and how much
Yes.
respect they have for the history that bodes in
Mm.
this place. And I mean, and that was the very first stop on our tour.
There was a lot of I remember a lot of uproar over the fact that they wanted to close it.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe they came to an agreement where they would close it as an active airfield because they still had planes landing there. They closed it as an active airfield, but I believe they came to some kind of agreement that the museum would be born and, you know, the history would be kept alive. But I recall this terrible uproar that they were like, we don't need it, we are closing it. And everyone was, there's so much history surrounding this place. Why would you take that away? Especially when a lot of the complaints were that kids weren't learning about it. It's like, so you're taking physical history away for, and I believe that there was never a straight answer, but I'm so glad that there is still something there.
There is so much. The museum is beautiful.
Yes,
The museum
it's
is
very
absolutely beautiful. The museum itself, I would say, is the control tower.
Mm.
And then there's 2 or 3 sheds or old Nissen huts.
Yeah.
That have a lot of relics, a lot of, not all, they have some weaponry in there, and some of them are real, some of them are not. Some of them are from the times. None of them are live anymore. So none of the ammunition or the weaponry in there can actually hurt somebody. Which is good, but they have the huts set up. One houses a Jeep, which they were charging the Jeep when we got there. So I immediately said, oh, they're charging the Jeep.
That did look fun. That did look fun.
They are charging the Jeep. So we were walking around in the other huts, and there are displays of old cigarettes, records, milk bottles, handguns, tools from the mechanics, right? And the grounds crew, toolboxes, whole toolboxes. And then they have, like, you know, what would be the setup of, they have old beds and stuff. What would be the setup for a soldier or an airman in his hut? And they show you, you know, there's the bed. I think I took a picture of it, but there was, the bed, and they had like a small coat rack, and they would hang their uniforms, and there was like potbelly stoves, and there would be like one in the middle of the room to keep the Nissen hut warm in the winter, and then like 1 or 2 smaller ones like throughout, just to radiate the heat. Because the volunteer that we spoke with while we were there, he said that in the winter the huts got cold as hell, and in the summer they got hot as hell.
Yeah,
which I believe because it's like a tin can, right? They're tin roofs, and they're the arched kind of upside down U bend tin roofs. And I can imagine that they held no heat in the winter, and they just held every ounce of warmth in the summer. You baked from the inside. So
precarious English weather.
Yes, the precarious English weather. One of the huts had a little Red Cross Aero Club sign, and it had the wings. So I'm sure if you guys were following along on Instagram, you saw some pictures of that. And then you go up into the control tower, and there's all display cases with newspapers, you know, Germany quits. And then you can go upstairs, and they have uniforms, you know, all maps and items from the control tower. We were fortunate enough they had a flak vest on display upstairs in the control tower.
Yeah.
So we were fortunate enough to be able to pick up the flak vest and take some pictures with it.
How heavy was it?
So Claire tried to put it on, but the hole for her head was way too small. So she just kind of like, the hole was very small.
It's a small hole.
It's a small, it was probably tied in such a way to keep it together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
At this point in time, but so she kind of just like rested it on her shoulder and held it.
Yeah.
I tried to get it up on my shoulder.
Nope.
I tried. I ended up just kind of holding it with both hands. It was very heavy. And then you think about how these guys would put it on over everything. So they would have like the insulated flight suit, the flight boots, the electric suit to keep them warm, because once you're above 10,000, it's
cold,
absolutely cold.
Yeah.
And then they'd have the Mae West, right? The parachute harness. They would have their shearling jackets, their gloves, their hats, their goggles, and then they'd put the flak vest over everything. and now you're weighed down.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're completely weighed down. And not that I didn't think, like, if God forbid these men had to bail out, how difficult it would be with the force of a plane going down to begin with. But now you're fighting the force of a plane going down and the weight of everything that's on your body.
Your body is like X amount of pounds heavier.
Yes. The weight of everything on your body.
Yeah.
Outrageous to me.
Extremely heavy.
Rougham was really, really cool. And then they took the Jeep out.
That looked like so much fun. I was so happy to see that.
Sit in the Jeep, take pictures. So we were all sitting in the Jeep, we're taking pictures of each other. And then he turned the Jeep on and we all heard the engine for the Jeep go on and everybody ran over to the Jeep. We're like, are we getting rides? Yes. So he would take groups of 4. So the driver would sit in the front, 1 in the front with the driver, 3 in the back.
Yeah.
And take them on a lap around the control tower, around the field at the speed of hold on or you will fall.
Weren't you like right at the end of your seat?
So I got in with a little bit. I got in with Marta from the Rosie the Reviewers podcast and 2 of the other girls, Natasha and Brianna. And I went to go sit in the back and I said, fit 2 or 3 back here. And he goes, oh, you could squeeze 3 back there. So he goes, just slide over a little bit. So now I'm sitting like not in a seat, just kind of up on the end, on the ledge of the Jeep. And he goes, just hold on. There's like I would equate it to like an oh shit bar on the side. Just hold on. Yeah. So you're like really gripping. And then
white knuckling your way
through the ride. But who cares? Because, oh my God, how much fun. You're in a Jeep from the war. You're riding in a Jeep from the 40s. That is roaring and purring like you would imagine a Jeep from the war to sound like. That real but I'm not gonna make that sound. Maybe we'll edit that out. My really like bad impression of a Jeep.
I think we should keep it. Hey, it's accurate.
It's accurate. My purring sounds are not that great. It's early in the morning.
Exactly. It's too early.
But it's like, how many men rode in this Jeep, right? How many laps around this airfield did this Jeep take in its lifetime? And you're sitting in the Jeep and you're making friends, right? You're making new friends and you're sitting in the Jeep with now people you call friends and you're like, wow, what? I just did that. What?
I know. It's mind blowing.
And you immediately feel thankful.
Yeah.
Right? You immediately feel thankful for the opportunity, for the people who organized it. And it's just crazy. It's so cool. It's so cool.
I'm going to tell you now that Matt Leach is going to love this episode because it's just inflating his ego. He will not be able to walk through any door with how big his head is going to get with compliments from the pair of us.
We have to edit this next bit out, but I might be angling to catch another punch in the face from him.
No. We need to keep that in as well because everyone deserves to know the story.
Matt spent the entire 2 days we were there doing his best impression of my Brooklyn accent, which he's, you know what? Your Brooklyn accent's not so bad, Matt. It's not so bad.
It should be for an actor. For an actor who is an actor.
It should be.
It should be pretty
good. But he spent the entire 2 days making fun of good-naturedly making fun of my Brooklyn accent.
That's what you think.
So I kept telling him that you're gonna catch a smack, but I never really ended up doing it.
Where did you go?
I just broke his chops a bit, which was fun.
Where did you go after Rougham? Was Rougham the whole first day, or was there?
After Rougham, we went to a crash site. It was in between Rougham and Thorpe Abbotts.
Yes.
So we went to a crash site, and the crash site was the site of a Pathfinder B-17. So not a bomber B-17, a Pathfinder that had taken off from Thorpe Abbotts, made it up to altitude, and then immediately just crashed and came back down.
I have never heard about this. This is what I mean when I say that people weren't learning about it. I had no idea that happened.
So it killed the entire 10 on the crew.
Gosh.
Plus 3 farmers that were working in the land at the time.
Wow.
and there's a memorial to it. I wish I could remember the exact location of the memorial, but it is in between RAF Rougham and Thorpe Abbotts. There is, I'm just trying to look, I took a picture of the plaque. So it was, okay, November 10th, 1943. A B-17 Flying Fortress heavy bomber took off from Thorpe Abbotts 4 miles away from where we were. The crash site is 4 miles from Thorpe Abbotts. So not far, really not far, and crashed onto Rectory Road.
Oh, no, I have seen it. I just think when you're young, you just kind of don't think about it until you're really into something, and then you're like, oh, there it is.
The plane burst into flames immediately upon impact, and there was no survivors. Yeah, so it says the aircraft attempting to avoid the tall line of trees that border the main driveway of the Oaksmere stalled and impacted the road directly where East Suffolk County Council roadmen were working with their horse and tumbrel. Oh, the horse died as well. This horrific accident claimed the lives of the 13 American servicemen aboard the B-17 and 4 civilian workmen. There were no survivors.
Jeez.
The B-17 was assigned to the Pathfinders of the 482nd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the B-17 was part of the Pathfinders, and there is a beautiful plaque at the bottom of the memorial where it details what it was, what happened with the crash. And I think it's so beautiful. It says, their lives we reckon not in years. Death leaves a vestige in its flight. The blazing comet disappears, yet leaves behind a lingering light. So take your place of honor among those who have gone before, and know you will be remembered for now and evermore.
That is so nice.
And there's an engraving of the passage that I just read, and then there are wings, with the propellers. The 2 propellers and a set of pilot's wings or airman's wings. It's not, if you're not looking for it, I feel like if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't seek it out.
It's kind of behind, I think, what might be a little park and like an event center now.
Yes.
And it's just a simple plaque, a simple memorial.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a simple piece of, it's physical, right? It's there. It's a simple memorial, but it holds weight. You think about it.
Absolutely.
What does this memorial mean? Like you could, how many people walk past it and don't stop to read it?
Yeah.
It was really, really lovely. Sad. I think I kept using the phrase all weekend that everything was like, stuff like that was harrowingly beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. No, I completely agree.
That's exactly how I would phrase it.
The places and the things that you have seen after incredibly sad events, people have built things in order to not make light of the situation, but in a way to honor them that is so beautiful and so nice that you can't. It's a shame that people do miss it, do walk past it, because it's either some people are so used to seeing it that they don't pay attention, or people just don't know.
Yeah.
So, and then it was on to Thorpe Abbotts after that.
And then it was on to Thorpe Abbotts after that, where we spent a very good amount of time at Thorpe Abbotts, which you would imagine, yes, because it's a Mighty Eighth on film tour, right? So we're spending a lot of time at Thorpe Abbotts. I immediately cried upon pulling into.
I was going to say, how did you feel?
So you don't come in through the front.
Yeah.
You come in because you're on this giant coach bus.
Yes.
The only way they can get you in is to drive you down the
runway. Yeah.
Drive you down the runway where how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of B-17s took off during the war.
Right.
So you're driving down the taxiway, you're on the runway, and then all of a sudden you see the control tower just kind of come out of the trees. And I definitely felt very strongly about being there. And like, as you're coming down the taxiway or down the runway, they're giving you history of some of the farmland that's still there. They're telling you where the 418th was, where was the 350th, where was the 349th. 351st, and it's like they were here, their heart stands were here, their heart stands were back here. Oh, this is the tree right here where Hang the Expense tried to take off with 2 Red Cross girls on a joy flight, hit the tree, and never made it off base.
Oh, God.
And there's Hang the Expense went through, I don't even know how many different forts they had, that crew, but they were always just renaming themselves. They were Hang the Expense, and there was Hang the Expense 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I know, I read about that.
And I think Harry Crosby talks about that in his book a lot.
He does.
They never bothered to change. They were just like, nope, same name, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You know,
Because
that's what for us.
So the tree where they hit with the 2 Red Cross girls on board is still, you could still see the damage in the tree. The tree was never taken down. The tree was never clipped to be like, less dangerous, because it's not in a space where anything could really, it could cause damage. It's just out in this big empty field right now. There's still some farmland out there. There's a farmhouse out there, which I believe was where the land girls would do most of their work during the war. And then you come down the taxiway and the bus stops, and you get out of the bus and you're standing face to face with the control tower on Thorpe Abbotts. And you're face to face with the set of Masters of the Air. It's identical.
They did a pretty good job,
They went out to measure
it
at Thorpe Abbotts. So the
like
set,
exact.
Yes. The crew, the volunteers at Thorpe Abbotts were telling us that the crew from the show came out to measure the control tower, the land. They came out to measure the dimensions of the huts. They needed to get it right, and they did, because it's identical. There are three or four Nissen huts still on property. One is the briefing room that is now the museum kind of. There's the bathrooms are in there, and there's the gift shop, and you can get like coffee and a snack in there. And in that room is where we did a viewing of episode 8.
Yes.
They did a viewing of episode 8 for us in there, and then after the viewing, they did Q&A with Adam, Jordan, and Jonas.
What new trivia did you get from the
what new
Q&A?
Trivia did I get from the Q&A?
We feel like we knew everything about every single episode.
We thought we knew a lot about Masters of the Air, and
to get it personally from the actors.
The Q&A didn't really go for that long, because the Q&A didn't really go for that long, and the reason it didn't is because Jordan, Adam, and Jonas were so personable that it wasn't like we couldn't speak to them until the Q&A. They were in the group with us. They were in the they were everywhere with us, and they were just hanging out, normal people. You just, you go up to them, you shake their hand, you introduce yourself, and then all of a sudden you're having a conversation with them about, where you live and what you do, and oh, hey, what do you have coming up next? Very, very, very kind gentlemen, very personable. Not a bad word to say about them. So the Q&A didn't really go on for that long. I did learn from Adam that Meatball the dog was a bit difficult. He was sweet, but huskies are known to be difficult. So Adam had the costume people sew an extra pocket into his pants, and he would put like sausages and stuff in his pocket so that he could kind of like nudge the dog along with him,
like, come on,
for their scenes. But he's like, I would just put my hand in my pocket and kind of like, jingle the sausages, and he would kind of follow me along. And Jordan spoke a lot in depth about, the scene where Hambone bails out.
Yes.
During the Munster mission from Brady's Fort, where he gets caught on the escape hatch. Yeah. And he's, telling, I forget who he's yelling to pull the release. Yeah. And he bails with the door attached to him. Yeah. And he spoke about how they had him kind of hanging there for a while. He said it was a very difficult day for him, that whole scene, because to put yourself in that mindset of, I'm bailing out of a plane. I'm already injured, right? Because Hambone gets hit first. He does, yeah. Hambone's got a really gnarly scar for the rest of the series. I'm already hit. I'm about to bail out. I'm hooked on this door. Am I going to make it? To put yourself into that perspective. Yeah. He said it was a lot on his mind, a lot on him. But I think he really executed that and captured that moment and that fear so well.
I think the weight of the situation, you know, as an actor, in things like this, you have to really get into it. It's not,
you have to put yourself there.
Yeah, it's not like method acting, but you have to be really in that mindset.
Yes.
On top of the fact that he's performing a stunt, essentially. There is no stunt double.
But it wasn't. And the thing is, I'm performing a stunt that wasn't a stunt at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And the amount of rehearsal.
What puts it into perspective.
Yeah. The amount of rehearsal that he probably would have had to go through to get the placements right with, you know, with it being filmed and obviously the camera. No wonder it was hard on him. It probably also hurt after
I would imagine
3 or 4.
I would imagine kind of you're hanging there. Yeah. And you've got all that gear on.
Yeah. And you're also yelling.
Right. And this goes back to the gear, right? All that weight and the flak vest. And now he's got the parachute.
Yeah.
All that gear. And you're an actor and you're loaded to the gills and they've got you hanging there.
Exactly.
And in your head, you're going, this guy really went through this.
Oh, yeah.
Really did.
Did Jonas answer any questions about Frank? Was there any sort of like, oh, this did not happen in the book type thing?
So Jonas could talk about Frank Murphy, I think, till the cows come home.
And so could I. So I'm very excited to have him come on so that we can...
I'm very excited to talk more in depth with Jonas about Frank Murphy and Frank Murphy's book. Especially because there's a moment in episode 8 where the Tuskegee Airmen join their billet, right, in the Stalag. Yes. And they all look very put off.
Yeah.
The boys all look put off.
Their faces are all very sour.
Very sour. And somebody asked Jonas how he felt about portraying Murphy in that light versus how Murphy genuinely was. And in the book, you know, Murphy was a jazz musician and he loved at the time they called it black jazz.
Yep.
Now we just call it jazz, right?
It's just jazz, yeah.
But at the time in the 40s, it was called black jazz, and Murphy spoke very highly of enjoying it, and he never had a problem with the Tuskegees.
No,
when they came to the Stalag, because he understood that they were all fighting for the same reason.
Yeah, I don't recall the
fighting
exact...
this war for the same reason.
Yeah, I don't recall the exact quote, but it's along the lines of, I didn't care.
I didn't care. That's exactly what Jonas had said, that Murphy didn't care.
He just, you know, we're all here for the same purpose. We're all trying to fight the same war.
We're all fighting the same war. Yeah. We're all fighting the same enemy.
And he was
our end result and our end goal here, right? The finish line should be the same for everybody, essentially.
Murphy was also very clocked onto the fact that African-American men were fighting 2 wars, the war in Europe and the war here at home.
Yeah.
For fairness.
Right. And
it's such a great book, and I recommend it to anyone if they haven't read it yet. It's beautiful, it's wonderful. I won't get into it now, but I do feel like Jonas and the other boys playing Frank and his crew were robbed of a great bailout scene.
Yes. We're gonna definitely talk more about that.
But we will get into that when we
will get into that further.
Because it's so great. It's incredible.
But Thorpe Abbotts itself was another place where you step onto the grounds and you just immediately feel, oh my God,
oh yeah,
what happened here? What went on here?
A lot of people say that they can still hear the rumble of the engines. I don't know if you got that kind of feeling.
So here's the thing. When we got to Thorpe Abbotts on the Friday, we were thrust into the briefing room.
Yeah.
And kind of given a rundown of what was going to go on while we were there.
Yeah.
And then they set us loose for lunch.
They said, go. Be free.
They set us loose for lunch. They have a food truck on site from the Half Moon Pub. So, and if anybody who doesn't know, the Half Moon Pub is the pub that the men of the 100th would frequent during the war. The pub is still there. So if you're in the area, I would highly recommend checking it out. So the Half Moon Pub has a food truck on site. So they kind of set us loose for lunch, and they were like, you can eat, you can walk around, whatever. We grabbed a bite to eat, and we ended up on that afternoon, Claire and I sitting down to eat, and then Adam, Jordan, and Jonas and Matt Leach just kind of coming to sit with us. So in the back of my head, I'm going, I want to go into the sheds, right?
Yeah,
I want to go into those. I want to go into those sheds, and I want to go up to the control tower.
Yeah.
But you're having a really nice conversation with these guys.
Yeah, that you don't want to ruin it.
Do not get up and leave.
Yeah, you can't. Like,
do
at that point...
not get up and leave. You're having a really nice moment.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Just enjoy this.
Yeah.
You're outside. The weather in England, I was so nervous. But apparently I left New York and it poured here for a week, and I got to England and we had like 60-degree weather and sunny.
Yeah.
So blue skies all around. Blue skies all around. So after we ate, then they did the viewing of the episode and the quick little Q&A, and then we got to walk around a little bit more. So at that point, I had made my decision that I was going up to the control tower.
Yes, obviously.
The control tower museum at Thorpe Abbotts. The control tower at Thorpe Abbotts is bigger than the control tower at Rougham.
Yes.
So the museum itself is bigger.
Yeah.
The museum has so many photographs.
Oh, yeah.
The museum has so many photographs and so much to offer. And you can even take the stairs all the way up to the top to the glass house.
Yeah.
Which is where, if when you're watching the show, where you see, Colonel Harding and Harry Crosby, they're up there against the railing, waiting for the forts to come out. They have binoculars up there. You can pick the binoculars up and take a look out around the airfield. You can pick up the phone. There's another phone in the main area of the museum on the second floor, where if you pick up the phone, it's an old rotary phone. So for those of you listening who don't know what a rotary phone is, Google it. You pick up the old rotary phone, and each number on the phone is assigned to a member of the 100th.
Oh,
and
wow.
You dial 1 for Rosie, 5 for Jack Kidd, and Rosie talks about the strength that it took to fight the war, and how they had to just give and give, and they knew what the mission was, and they knew what the cost was. Jack Kidd talks about, and it's them as older gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
So this is them in their 60s, their 70s. Jack Kidd talks about how the most difficult part of any mission for him was handing the plane over to the bombardier, because you're completely, you have zero control. You are just up there. You are at mercy up there to watch.
Yeah. And you have to hope for the best.
And hope for the best. And you just pick it up, and it's like, oh my God,
that is so nice.
It's so nice, and it's so sad.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God. And there's, pictures of the Buckies are up there, right? John Egan and Gail Clevin. There's a whole display for Rosie. It's a whole case. His uniforms are up there. There's photos of him and his wife, her pins from the war, because his wife served with the Waves. Phyllis Rosenthal served with the Waves. Their wedding announcement, because they married in Nuremberg during the Nuremberg trials. Their wedding announcements are up there. Photos of him during the war. Photos that were taken of Rosie when he crashed and crash landed in Russia, and he's got his arm in the sling. Photos of him after the war. Photos from the Nuremberg trials. There are uniforms. There's leather jackets up there. There's photos of Red Cross girls, and I'm positive that I spied a photo of Tatty Spats up there.
It's sort of like a silhouette of her, weirdly. You can tell it's her. But...
It's a photo from it's like Fun on Base, and they were having like a carnival, and I think it's her doing a potato sack race.
It is, yeah.
So on my initial visit to Thorpe Abbotts on the Friday, I just went into the control tower, and then we left. I went back to Thorpe Abbotts on Sunday.
Yes.
On my own with Molly, our friend Molly. And funny enough, some family friends that we have out there were kind enough to drive Molly and I out to Thorpe Abbotts. So I went back on the Sunday, and really it was like different, because on the Sunday it was very quiet. There's no bus of 45 people getting off and being let loose. It was just us and a few other museum visitors. and you can really feel it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you go up to the glass house in the control tower, they have air, you can hear, they have engines rumbling. So if you're up there and you're looking out, you can hear it. Then I got to go into the sheds.
Yes.
And that's where they have, more pictures, a lot of information in the sheds outside on Harry Crosby, on his crew, Justice Snappin, on Blakely's crew. They have the bike repair. They have a ball turret that if you're short enough, you can go in. One of the girls that was with us on tour went into the ball turret.
Wouldn't be me.
Believe it or not, wouldn't be me either. Usually I'm short enough for things. I'm too tall for the ball turret.
How tall would you have had to be for the
I think
ball
under
turret?
5 feet.
Wow. Yeah, no, I have no chance.
I think under 5 feet, which I don't think was the qualification during the war.
No, it wasn't the requirement. I mean,
but I think now the fact that it's an artifact from the war, you have to be under a certain height to get in there.
Yeah.
They have a Magneto, a giant engine.
Wow.
They have, and I don't remember if these were replica or not, but bombs. Or what would be a bomb.
Yeah, they may or may not have been replicas. Is it? They
may be replicas. They may be just disarmed.
Yeah,
I don't know. But in any case, they have all that up there.
Yeah.
They have the chalkboards where they have the crew names and the mission of the day, bicycles.
Yeah.
And then it was just I really got to go through again the Control Tower Museum that day too, and really take stock of every single photo that was in there.
It's so beautiful.
I wasn't rushed. Not that I felt rushed on the Friday.
Yeah, but
I had a different experience there on the Friday.
Yeah,
this was I feel like more
personal, would you
personal.
say? Yeah.
I would say more personal. Whereas on the Friday, I was there with friends and I got to enjoy these moments with friends and I got to see my friends enjoying it versus they got to see me enjoying it. We made memories there together. And then this was really just, this visit on the Sunday was the memory for myself that I got to kind of walk away with.
Very calming, very serene,
very calming, very peaceful. I really did a number on the gift shop in there on both days.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Not only did I come back with everything, just about everything I bought for myself in the gift shop, I bought one for Winnie. There's a stack of things that need to be mailed.
Full of stuff for me.
We're also sending back some British snacks.
Very exciting for me.
But it was a really beautiful trip out there.
Yeah.
On both occasions, on the Friday and the Sunday. The Saturday of the tour was, I would say, the more somber of the days.
But weirdly, it's the one that not that weirdly I found enough not most exciting, but it was the one that I was, I could have been able to see this at any point in my life living there. I would not have thought to go and do the things you did on Saturday because that was the cemetery day, right?
So Saturday we started at the Cambridge City Cemetery.
Yes. Which
if you walk in, it's a public cemetery in the front.
It's so beautiful. It was
beautiful. It was a bit cold in the morning. The sun hadn't really broken through yet. So we were like making sure to walk around just to keep ourselves a little bit warm.
Yeah, you gotta stomp around a little bit.
But so you walk through the city cemetery and it's a public cemetery in the front, just like you would at any cemetery. And then in the back, it opens up into the military cemetery.
Yes.
And there's Americans buried there. Any kind of servicemen, they could have been from Australia, New Zealand, America, England. They're buried there.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, for what it is, it's big, but it's not tremendous. It's not overwhelming where you can't say, I would need more than one day to kind of go around.
Yeah, you could do the city cemetery.
You could do the city cemetery in maybe an hour and a half. 2 hours if you really wanted to stop and see every headstone.
Yeah.
There was two WAFs buried there, two women.
Yes.
So we got some photos of their headstones. So we're going to be digging a little bit further on them, which is
really exciting.
I did keep my eyes peeled really for any kind of Red Cross woman anything while I was over there. And I was surprised and then saddened at the fact that I had seen at least 3 headstones for women who died during the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult, even
It's
though
difficult.
they were
It
never
puts it
in
into
combat.
perspective.
Yeah, they were never
They
in
were
combat.
yeah.
They were in combat zones.
Yeah.
And they knew
were.
the danger, and they still did it.
Yeah.
They still did their
They
job.
did their job. They knew what their job was, and they did it.
Yeah. There is, I assume there would be, you know, a Red Cross girl there, or but I believe the one that I'm thinking of is buried in France.
Well, there is a Red Cross girl buried in the Cambridge American Cemetery.
Yeah, I think we should definitely cover that. You know,
absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. From there, we went to the RAF Steeple Morden Memorial.
Yes.
Wow.
It's
not anywhere. It just opens. It's just this. It's in a field.
It's gorgeous.
And it's gorgeous.
It's so nice.
It is a tremendous memorial, and at the center is the nose of a P-51. And at the memorial, Jonas and Adam read a passage from James Doolittle's Changing of the Air Strategy. And they did it with our tour guide, Norman.
Yes.
And if anybody's following us on Instagram, there is a video of that reading on our Instagram. You can find it. It's so
nice. It's so
find
beautiful.
it on our page. This bit of it didn't click for me right until I got back on the bus. I said to Claire, I was looking at the video again. I was sitting with Claire, I was looking at the video, and I said to Claire, I said, "Oh my God." She goes, "What?" I said, "This passage that they read is Doolittle ordering the air strategy to change." I said, "This is the moment in Masters of the Air at the end of episode 7 where Rosie's signing his re-up paperwork and Colonel Bennett is telling him that the air strategy is changing.
Yeah.
That the bombers are going out as bait so that the P-51s can attack. Whereas previously the P-51, their mission was to bring the bombers back alive.
They were called the Little Friends.
The Little Friends. To the B-17s were the Big Friends because they were tremendous.
Big, huge.
But this is the moment where he orders the air strategy to shift. And I was so into watching them do the reading that it didn't click for me until after.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh my God, that's the moment." And Claire goes, "I didn't even realize." I said, "That's the moment." In the office, Doolittle sees a sign that says, "The first duty of the 8th Air Force is to bring the bomber back alive." And Doolittle orders the sign to be changed.
Yeah.
And he orders it to say that the first duty of the 8th Air Force is to destroy the German fighter.
It's such a poignant
And it's
moment.
such a poignant moment in the war. And that's where you start to see the destruction of the Luftwaffe.
Yeah. I love that they chose to read that specific part. And they all read it so well. I mean, obviously, it's two actors. It's 2 actors. Obviously, they should have some kind of monologue script skill. You would think. But on you sending me all these videos and pictures and stuff, I really felt so immersed, and I felt like I was genuinely there with you all.
I had such a random meeting with one of the women that was there with us on the second day.
Oh, we absolutely have to talk about this because it was like
so at Steeple Morden, we picked up a gentleman and his friends that maintain the monument and the area. His name was Flacky.
Oh, that's cute.
And Flacky was so cool. Flacky was great. Flacky had an old box of Lucky Strike cigarettes on him, and he was passing them around in the box. He took us to the Memphis Belle Hard stand as well.
Yes.
We didn't spend too much time there because the wind was knocking us all over.
Oh, yeah.
We literally took a photo on the hard stand, and it was like, okay, back on the bus.
Back on the bus.
It was
the wind goes right through you.
Yes. And he was passing around the cigarettes, and he, back then cigarettes didn't come in a box the way they do now. They were wrapped in like a tinfoil type of paper, but he had them in a box, and he was just passing them around in the box. When we got to our location after lunch, which was RAF Bassingbourn, which is still an active military base. So we were not allowed to take photos We could take photos of certain, like of a monument or something that was up from the war. We could take photos of that. We were only allowed, there was one person from the tour who was a professional photographer who was allowed to take photos. We designated one person. Nobody could take pictures with their phones.
Probably got
so
clearance.
I really don't have a lot of pictures from Bassingbourn.
No.
I have pictures from out on the out by the control tower.
Yeah.
Out there we were allowed to. But other than that, so Flacky was so kind when I mentioned that we had the podcast, and I introduced myself to him to take the cigarettes out of the box and let me hold them in the paper.
Yeah.
In their original. And these are pre-America joining the war, because the packaging is green. So the packaging is green. And then when they needed the green dye for the uniforms, Lucky Strike switched their packaging to white with the red circle in the middle, which is what we see a lot of advertised in old Life magazines and in all of these wartime or war adjacent media and shows. You see the white box or the white package. So he was kind enough to let me hold them and take some pictures of them. Such a nice gentleman. And while we were at Bassingbourn, so this was the moment, I think I texted you frantically after it happened.
Yeah, you did.
And I said, you have to sit down and listen to what I'm about to tell you. We were standing outside of one of the barracks, and one of the gentlemen that had joined us when we stopped at Steeple Morden was showing a uniform. He had a uniform on a mannequin. And he was talking about, the pins and how a guy would go out and, the pins were so shiny and the uniform was pressed, and a girl would say, oh, he's a soldier. Oh, he's got money. Oh, we're going to have a good time. I'm standing there watching, and I just happened to look a little to my left. And with the group we picked up at Steeple Morden was a young lady, I would say about my age.
Yeah.
Her name is Maddie. And I remember clocking when we got to Steeple Morden. I said, oh, she's got blonde hair, and she had it kind of in pin curls and tied in a kerchief.
Beautiful.
And I said, oh my God, I said, she's so vintage. She had red lipstick on. I said, she's so cool. Standing there watching the discussion on the uniform, and I looked down, and Maddie's wearing a ring, and it was wasp wings from the war bent into a ring.
Yeah.
And I said to her, excuse me, I said, your ring. I said, your ring is wasp wings. And she said, nobody's ever clocked that my ring is wasp wings before.
And of course it would be you.
And of course it would be after our 3-part series on the wasp.
Yeah. How perfect. How
I
beautiful.
introduced myself to her, and I said, I'm Gabby from the Donut Dollies podcast. And I said, we just did a 3-part series on the wasp. I said, I saw your ring and immediately knew what it was. Then I started telling her about how we spoke to Josie Egan's daughter, Katie. I showed her some of the photos, and it was just this full circle moment where I felt like we did something, right? We did something with that series that really reached. And I said, I'm proud of that, right?
Oh, definitely.
Turns out Maddie is a reenactor, and she does WASP reenactment. She does She does other units and other reenactments from the war as well, but she does WASP reenactment. Yeah. So Maddie, if you are listening, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you. And
I can't wait to speak with her.
We really can't wait to talk to you. Yeah, we really can't wait to speak with her. So cool. She was so sweet. So from Bassingbourn, then we went to the Cambridge American Cemetery.
Yeah.
And that was the final stop on the tour. That was the spot that really took me down. That was the spot that broke me.
I think it's because
into perspective. You step into that cemetery, and it's rows and rows, probably upwards of more than 1,000.
Oh, absolutely.
White crosses, all uniform.
Yeah.
All together, all of them Americans who never made it home. Right? It puts it into perspective. And this is just here, Americans who never made it home. This isn't Normandy. This isn't,
It's just
this isn't Omaha. This is just here in Cambridge.
Yeah.
Men and the few women who came to serve in Cambridge who never made it home.
Yeah.
And you had done a little research for me ahead of time and said to me that
Yeah, go here,
Lester
yeah.
Saunders from Blakely's crew,
Yeah,
passed on the Bremen raid in October of 43, was buried in Cambridge.
and I said you should go see him, not knowing that that was part of
Yes.
the
So
actual
not
schedule.
knowing that
So
Lester was one of the 3 headstones that the tour was going to stop at when we got to the cemetery.
yeah,
Claire and I broke off to find him ahead of time.
have a little time by yourselves. That's
And
really sweet.
we broke off to find him while they were doing their first or second stop.
Yeah,
And we left a penny
good.
on top
Very
of
sweet.
his headstone and said a prayer.
That's nice.
And that was the moment I said to Claire, "Why am I crying?"
It's
she said
natural
to
to
me,
cry.
I said, "Why am I crying?" I said, "I have not a single tie to the 8th Air Force. I have not a single tie to anybody who served in the Air Force. My family served in the Army.
Right.
And with the grace of God, every man in our family who served came home. But I have no ties to Lester Saunders. I have no ties to the Bloody Hundredth or Thorpe Abbotts. Why am I crying? I don't know him. He doesn't know me." And then I said to her, "How long do you think it's been since somebody has came to see him?
Want to see
How long do you
him,
think he's been like?
yeah.
How long do you think he's been resting here alone?"
Yeah, and that makes me sad too.
And I think it goes back to saying, which we say quite a bit, is that when you speak their name, they're never truly gone, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when you speak their name, Claire believes that they get called down to the bar, the big bar up in heaven, right? And
Yeah.
I'm with her on that. I think that they get a second chance to kind of look down and say, "Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
You know, somebody's remembering me.
Some new friends.
Somebody is thankful for the sacrifice I made," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she made me stand there, and I'm so thankful that she did. She made me stand there and she made me say his name out loud. She made me read his rank and the unit he served with.
Very sweet.
And as I was wiping the snot off my face, the tour group came and joined us at Lester's headstone.
Yeah.
And that was when Adam and Jonas rubbed the sand.
Oh, you sent me that video and I was gone.
So
I lost it.
Credit to Claire for that video. But we took some photos. I took some photos of them rubbing the sand into Lester's headstone. And for those that don't know, rubbing sand into a serviceman's headstone is a way of memorializing them and remembering them. And it brings, because it makes their name and their inscription on the headstone stand out.
Yeah.
It's a way of shedding light, right? It brings them into the light.
Yeah.
So Adam and Jonas did that for Lester. And it was just really, really beautiful. Our tour guide, Norm, had some photos. He had a photo of Lester. He had Lester's official Army photo. He had a photo of Justice Snappin, and then he had a photo of Blakely's crew. So Lester with his whole crew. And at that point, we kind of wandered into the chapel. The chapel is stunning. It's one of the most beautiful chapels I've ever seen. The ceiling is all mosaic, and it's got all B-17s tiled into the ceiling.
It's gorgeous.
It is beautiful. And there's a map on the one wall, and you could see where there were bases, where planes came from. Absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. And then all of the glass, all the windows has the crest of every 50 state in stained glass. Really, really beautiful.
It's such a beautiful place.
It was I sent a picture of it to my dad of the mosaic ceiling and then a row of crosses. And I sent it to my dad and I said, it really puts it into perspective. And he said to me, he goes, "That is the saddest, beautiful photo I've ever seen."
Yeah.
And there's a Red Cross girl buried there. And she happens to be in the same row as Lester.
Oh, that's nice.
She happens to be in the same row as Lester.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, she was from, hold on, because I did take a photo. She was from New Jersey.
Oh, goodness.
Margaret Jeffrey, American Red Cross, New Jersey. Which is, I guess, as close to my home as you're going to get.
I mean, you grew up there, right?
I did live in Jersey for quite a bit.
Yeah.
But really, really beautiful. It was just an incredible experience. I really can't thank the We Happy Few guys enough.
Yeah.
For something so generous that they gave us this experience. It's so generous. Adam, Jonas, Jordan were just absolutely delightful. I mean, you
personable,
think
so nice.
Actors, right?
Yeah.
Actors. The three of the sweetest guys I've ever met.
Kept you very well entertained.
They did keep us very well entertained. But just normal.
Just normal lads,
normal.
yeah.
They were
like,
normal,
like
down to earth guys.
Yeah, like I knew they would be.
I was hoping, right? I went in with zero expectations.
Yeah.
I did find out though when I went back to Thorpe Abbotts on the Sunday, one of the museum volunteers was so kind and kind of just stuck with my little group that I was there with and answered any questions we had. And I had asked him, because obviously anybody who was listening to our very first episode knows that we did dive into the Red Cross, and that unlike what you see in Masters of the Air, right, where the girls on the truck are stationed at Thorpe Abbotts.
Yeah.
What really was that they lived in like an estate. They had a wing of the estate, and they would go out on the bus every day, and then they would come back to the estate at night, and they would rotate the bases they went to. I found out that Thorpe Abbotts was the only airfield that had 3 Red Cross girls stationed permanently on base.
They did.
They were stationed permanently on base, and they were the only women. Yeah. There were no nurses. The way you see it in the show, where you see like secretaries and,
that didn't.
They're in, the colonel's office and they're typing reports. None of that in real life.
No.
Just the 3 Red Cross girls were the only ones to live on that base.
But I love that they added that in.
Yes, 100%. I love
the
that
artistic
they added
license
that
of it. I really liked it.
The museum volunteers were so kind and so patient with every question I had. Turns out quite a few people clocked that James Douglas was listed as unknown in a photo on one of the boards, and the museum staff was like,
it pained me.
2 people mentioned that to us on Friday. I said,
well, here's one more.
I said, I had asked the volunteer, I said, this gentleman here who's listed as unknown, I said, isn't that James Douglas? And the one guy who I was speaking with, he said, I'm not really sure. He goes, let's ask. And I forget his name. Might have been Brian or Gary. I don't remember. But he said, let's ask him.
Sounds and like 2 very British names. Either
and
would
the
work.
Gentleman that came kind of hustling over looked at it and immediately went, that's Jim Douglas. And I said, how come he's listed as unknown? I said, it's a very obvious photo that he's in a Jeep with Harry Crosby and Rosie.
Yes.
I said, it's a very obvious photo that it's James Douglas.
It's one of my favorites. So when you told me,
I've seen that photo before online.
Yeah.
They said that the photos on these boards that are drilled or screwed into the walls in the control tower, right, these boards have been the way they are since the 50s, since before they were put into the tower.
Yeah.
So the captions on the boards are from the 50s. So whoever put them together
just didn't know
that was James Douglas. So the museum said that they were going to overlay the unknown and put his name.
Thank you.
Put his name there for people.
I think it was you that said it. No, it was when Claire called me. She showed me the picture because it is one of my favorites. I have always been very outward that is one of my favorite pictures of them.
Yeah.
And she's like, there he is. Oh, he's labeled as unknown. And I said, that fix it. Needs to be fixed.
They have a photo up there too of a Red Cross girl sitting on a bomb. And it just says, Red Cross girl sitting on the hot seat. And I said, oh, there you go.
There she is.
There is a whole case up there. Like I said, there's a whole case for Rosie, but there's also a whole display case for Frank Murphy as well.
Good.
So John Egan was not the only person to come home from the Regensburg mission with a fez.
Yeah, there was a whole little clique of people.
Frank Murphy's fez is in Thorpe Abbotts.
Oh, I love that. You know,
it's in the case at Thorpe Abbotts. Yeah.
you know how you just said about Lester Saunders, where you're crying, why am I crying? I have zero connection. I feel that way about Murphy, and I feel that way about Douglas, and you also feel that way about Blakely. There's something that kind of, even though we don't know these people,
I think it's
there's
because
something.
the show doesn't put them in the forefront, right?
Yeah, we kind of like an
Your
underdog a
forefront,
little
your
bit.
forefront, your forefront characters are John Egan and Gail Clevin and Rosie and Crosby.
Yeah,
And, you know, but there's these guys, these men
in the
now
background.
in the background who have a story. And I
And it's
think
so
that's what it
immersive.
was. It was that I wanted to know more about the Bremen raid. I wanted to know more about how Blakely and Jack Kidd landed their plane at Ludham,
Yeah,
how they managed to survive, and how Saunders was the only one in that crew to pass on that
yeah,
mission. I wanted to know if the rumor was true that Jack Kidd was injured on the mission and that Blakely had to
mm,
fly that plane back by himself.
yeah.
Not true. I
Okay,
found that out at the museum. Not
good.
true.
I wonder why that is one of the stories. I wonder why that
I
is.
wanted to know, did Justice Snappen have nose art? They
Yeah,
did not. They
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 didn't.
simply went by their tail number, which I feel like encapsulates Ev Blakely very well, because he's
Yeah,
described as by Crosby in his book and the actor who portrayed him, that he's the most GI of GIs.
he's a very
Very straight
serious,
laced, took his job very seriously,
stoic.
but was very good to his crew.
Yeah,
So
he
I
didn't
feel
have
like
time for
going
the
by
fun.
just the tail number is a very like Ev Blakely type characteristic.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, um, but I think that's why you and I find that we're connected, or we feel more for these gentlemen, because there is such a
Yeah.
story that the
Mm.
show, and granted, the show probably could have gone for 15, 20 episodes if they really wanted to get everybody in there.
Which they
Um,
should have. That's what I'm going to
Apple,
stand
we
up.
know you have that kind of money.
Apple, please.
We know you have that kind of money,
Do it
Apple.
again.
Um, so we have taken to doing our own research, doing our own
Yeah,
digging. And I think that's why when I went in there on the Sunday, I was like making it my mission to find out what I could.
I know every single thing
Yeah, find out every
possible.
single thing.
Yeah.
Um, the trip was not long enough. I wanted to stay longer.
Next time we
I think
will.
I spent one day in London after, so on the
Yeah.
Monday. And I actually caught the play Punch, which is starring, of all people, David Shields, who portrayed Ev Blakely
Mm.
in Masters of the Air. And I did get to speak with him a bit about Masters of the Air. And he was sitting and having a drink. So for any Masters fans, take this for what you will. He was sitting and having a drink after the play. The Young Vic Theater is very small, so it's attached to a
It's
bar.
tiny, yeah.
So it's not like I ambushed him in a bar. We were in the bar hanging out as well.
We were all there.
Right? He was sitting and having a drink with a friend. The guy he was sitting with was Bob from episode 4,
The
German
spy.
spy. The German spy that links up with Quinn and Bailey,
Yeah.
who tries to make it out alive and it gets shot.
But then he writes the date wrong on
But he
his
writes the
paper,
date
and
wrong.
he
And
outs
that's how they
himself.
clock him. He outs himself. He writes the date like a European.
Yeah.
And he
He
outs
writes
himself.
it day, month, year.
So not only did I get to talk to David Shields about Masters of the Air for a few minutes. I didn't
A
want to
good
take up
chunk of
too much.
time.
Didn't want to take up too much of his time.
Yeah.
But I also got to meet Barney White.
Barney, yeah.
Barney White, who portrayed Bob, was also a real gentleman. Both of them so sweet. This tour was, like I said, I went in with zero expectations. I came out of it with amazing new friends and a real appreciation and fulfillment.
Oh, for sure.
Ooh.
I feel like it changed you somewhat. Not in like a bad way. I feel like it has fulfilled you so much that you know, you know what to do next. You've got more information to do this with. And everyone should sit and prepare for next year when I can join in the conversation, because If I'm not there next year, I'm gonna lose it.
You will be.
Guys, I'm gonna lose my mind
You
if
will be.
prepare to be sick of me.
Um, so I could go on and on and on, and I'm not going to make myself I'm not going to be so long-winded that people get to the point in this episode where they go, she won't shut up. Um, but we will 100%, I will be sharing more photos on the Dolly's Instagram.
Yes.
We'll be sharing more photos. We will be diving into more of the WAF and the Red Cross and the women who we encountered while over there. There's a lot that this trip has given, not just me, but given you and I, in terms of people that we can meet, and people that are out there and so kind to want to be involved as well.
Yeah, we've made some great friends, and not just this weekend,
and not just this weekend, but Winnie and I are in this for the long haul. And I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that was there. Adam, Jonas, Jordan, Maddie, Matt Leach.
I guess
Matt Leach. Leighton, Karsten, the We Happy Few team, all of mine and Winnie's friends that were there with us. So you chickies are the bread and butter of what keeps us going. You are so kind and supportive, and you're wonderful friends. And to the team and the volunteers at Thorpe Abbotts and Rougham and Bassingbourn, you guys are amazing. Steeple Morden. To the men and women who served in the war and who now rest peacefully here at home or peacefully in England, thank you.
We wouldn't be doing what we're doing.
We would not be doing what we're doing without you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening again. We hope that this encourages you to join us on the next tour. We would love to see you.
Yes,
we would love to meet you.
If you're not following the We Happy Few 506 team, follow them on Instagram, follow them on Facebook. They're doing really great things. They're connecting people with history.
Yeah.
And they're creating friendships that last.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I have
definitely
not a bad word to say about them. So
no.
Thank you guys for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Yes, we'll see you next time. We got a real fun one coming up for you guys next time.
I'm very excited.
I'm very excited. We're not gonna give too much away. All I'll say is get your coffee and donuts ready.
Oh, that's a hint. That's a good hint.
It's a good hint. Get your coffee and donuts ready, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.